Now, this is Woman's Hour. Good morning to you. The organisation Mankind Initiative is behind a new ad, already viewed over 6 million times online, with the aim of highlighting that men can be victims of domestic abuse. Now, in this ad, you may have seen it, passers-by in a square in London, quite a busy one, are quick to intervene when they see a man attacking a woman, first verbally and then with some physical force. Now, when the sexes are reversed, the reaction is one, well, really of sort of amusement. People stare, have a bit of a giggle, nudge their friend, but nobody does anything. Well, Mark Brooks is the chair of the Mankind Initiative. Polly Neate is the chief executive of Women's Aid. Welcome to you both. Mark, what were you trying to say with this ad?
Well, what we were trying to say is that society still has a long way to go to recognise male victims in the same way they rightly do female victims. And the inspiration in many respects was the incident between Jay-Z and Solange around a month ago.
Now, this occurred in a lift. Solange is his sister-in-law. He is married to Beyonce. Yes, go on.
And on social media, trended worldwide, what Jay-Z said to Solange. And our question was that reflected in British society? And also, why was it acceptable for such a message to go round the world when, if you'd reversed the genders, rightly so, no one would ever think of actually sending such a message around the world and for it to be then retweeted and picked up. So we wanted to challenge to see whether British society actually felt the same and also whether things had moved on.
But does anybody question, Mark, the notion that some men are indeed the victims of domestic violence and are attacked by women? Who is saying that doesn't happen?
Well, with the reaction from the video shows that people still today don't take it as seriously as they do female victims. And what we want to make sure is that there's support and recognition for female victims, and also that there's support and recognition for male victims. And I think that's what we wanted to see actually happen on the streets of London. It would have been brilliant if there was no video, in terms of what was filmed meant that the man was supported and also the female victim was supported. That would have been wonderful. That's the result that we're looking for. And in 2 years' time, when we conduct the same type of experiment, that's what we hope to see.
OK, but nobody intervened on behalf of the male victim in that instance?
Absolutely. Nobody did intervene.
Polly, why do you think they didn't?
Well, at Women's Aid, we wouldn't advise people to intervene if they witness a situation of intimate partner violence, no matter what the gender of the victim or the perpetrator.
No matter how public it was?
We wouldn't advise it. We would advise people to call the police. It can be very dangerous, both to yourself and also later or at the time to the victim. If people intervene, there can be revenge taken later, and I've heard of incidents of women being severely abused later on because someone's intervened. So I just wanted to make that clear. The reason I think people might be less likely to intervene with a male victim is they may have less fear for his safety, because they may feel that a man is less likely physically to be seriously injured by a woman. That does reflect the reality. So it's absolutely right that there are some men that are victims of domestic violence, and of those men, some are the victims of female perpetrators. However, it's important, and the video uses a statistic of 40% of domestic violence victims being men. It's really important to be clear what we mean by domestic violence, what severe domestic violence is, what the experience of that is, and who it affects.
Right. We'll come back to you, I promise. But Mark, what do you mean by that figure of 40%?
Well, the 40% figure is an independent figure, and that's from the Office for National Statistics, and it's been a consistent trend for many a year now. They've been doing that for 10 years. And what it says is that men who report to that survey anonymously, as do female victims, 40% of them say that they've been a victim of domestic abuse in their lifetime.
Now, that isn't the Home Office definition of domestic violence, is it?
Well, the Home Office definition of domestic abuse or domestic violence includes violence, but also includes emotional, psychological abuse. And as far as we're concerned, that the British Crime Survey statistics show reflect that back. But I would say that obviously that the Office for National Statistics are also measuring female domestic abuse victims. So 60% of victims are female, 40% are male, and that's what the statistics say. So whatever definition may be used, they've been consistent and they apply to both genders.
Polly?
And I think that's important.
Well, yes, okay, so 40% of those people who have been victims of a violent incident in their home during their lifetime are men. Absolutely right. What at Women's Aid we mean by, and where services are urgently needed, and I might add, because of this statistic, are being diverted. Funding is being diverted
that
from
is
women's
a real
services
concern of yours,
to
isn't it?
men's services.
Because
It
of
is.
this statistic.
Absolutely. It is a real concern. And it is being looked at in the wake of the HMIC inquiry, actually. This statistic is being examined. The issue is that when you look at a pattern, the really dangerous, coercive, controlling pattern of domestic violence, when you look at the victims of 4 or more incidents of domestic violence, 89% of those are women. Now, that isn't to say, and of the remainder that are men, many are the victims of men. Now, that isn't to say that there are no victims of male victims of domestic violence, and that when there are, they don't need specific services. Their needs are quite different from female victims. They're less likely to be living in constant fear of their perpetrator. They're less likely to be killed by a long way. And it's just very important to acknowledge that. It's not acknowledging the facts about domestic violence isn't about a competition to say there aren't male victims.
But your real concern is that this oft-repeated statistic is now threatening, actually, the safety of some women because services are being readjusted in order to cater for these male victims. Yeah,
absolutely. So what's happening at local level is the total pot of funding is being reduced, and then it's being split on this 60-40 basis.
What do you say to that, Mark?
And there's a lack of demand for the services that are opening for men.
Right. Lack of demand for male services, Mark.
Well, firstly, nobody in their right minds wants one single penny switched from support for female victims and given to men. I would actually, though, dispute the level of services that there are actually out there for male victims. There aren't a lot. There's certainly not enough for female victims. There's certainly not enough for male victims. And I would say that this statistic is not being used to take away money from female services and given to men. We want to see the evidence of that, the real hard evidence.
What is your evidence for that?
We're seeing this around the country where commissioners of services, so the people who allocate public funding at local level, local authorities in the main, are requiring services to reconfigure themselves so that they offer support to men. And I would add a large number of member services of the Women's Aid Federation are now offering services for men, a very large number.
Well, thank you both very much indeed for coming in this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you, Polly. Thank you, Mark. Likely, I know, to get an interesting reaction from you, so keep your thoughts coming at BBC Woman's Hour on Twitter, or you can email us via our website, bbc.co.uk/radio4/Woman's Hour.